last basic maneuver we're going to talk about today is turning. And there's two different ways to turn on your skateboard: kick turns and carving. Carving is the style of turning where you keep both feet squarely on your board and you turn simply by leaning on your toes, leaning on your heels. Depending on the type of bushings in your trucks, soft bushings are going to be very responsive. Harder or stiffer bushings are going to turn less for carving. To practice carving, we recommend starting in a wide, flat space and get comfortable pointing your front shoulder in the direction that you want to carve. As you get more comfortable with carving and you want to challenge yourself, I recommend getting a set of cones or even using chalk to mark areas that you can carve through in a serpentine motion, making sure that you're comfortable with both your front side and your back side carves. The most effective and commonly used method of turning is called a kick turn. This is what happens when we have our weight split between the front and tail of our board. We bend our front knee, allowing the front of the board to lift up, and using our shoulders, determine what direction we are going to pivot the board in. To learn your kick turns, I recommend starting out stationary with something we call squash the bug. To squash the bug, you're going to start off with your back foot on the tail of your skateboard. Your foot is facing perpendicular. You're going to place your front foot perpendicular as well, right on the front bolts. And we're going to pretend that there's a creepy crawler coming towards you and you're going to have to squash it. So, with all of your might, straighten that front leg and squash the bug. Once you've mastered squashing your bug, you're going to want to learn how to lift up the front of the board so you can take a look at the imaginary work you've just done. To bring the front of your board back up, you're going to simply bend your front knee, which is going to displace more weight towards your tail, allowing the board to lift. Common problems with squashing the bug and up and downs is that we overuse our shoulders. It's very important to note that as I stomp and bring it back up, my shoulders stay level. I'm not leaning backwards or forwards. I'm simply letting my front leg extend to go down and bend to come up. The more you do this, the more comfortable you will get. And a little cheat code that we've noticed is if you hang the heel of your back foot off of your board, as you come back to your tail, your foot is going to touch the ground first and let you know you are securely landed. So go ahead and practice those up downs as they are crucial for learning to kick turn. We at Alchemy abide by the rule of 5. If you can do a trick 5 times in a row without falling, you're absolutely ready to move on. Of course, you can move on at any rate, but anyone can land a trick once. Landing a trick 5 times lets you know you really know how to do that trick and you are good to move forward. Once you've mastered the art of squashing bugs, we can start to learn how to kick turn. So, start off like you're doing a bug squash with your back foot on the tail of your board, your front foot on the bolts, and go ahead and extend that front leg, bringing the board down. Now, instead of simply coming all the way back to our tail, we're going to start to learn how to pivot. So, to pivot, we're going to take our front shoulder and we're going to point it in whatever direction we would like to turn. Seeing as our bodies like to be a flat surface, as soon as you twist in the middle and bend your knee, your board is going to want to match wherever your shoulders are pointed. So, backside kick turns, turn your front shoulder, lift, and you'll pivot. Frontside kick turns, same thing, but the other direction. Lift and pivot. The more you swing your shoulder, the bigger your turns will be. Go ahead and practice those kick turns till you feel comfortable, and I recommend seeing how many spins you can do because they look awesome. Now that we've gone over all of the basics, we're going to teach you one of the most sought after tricks in the world of skateboarding. That's right, it's time to learn how to ollie. If you've never seen an ollie before, it essentially looks like a skateboarder is a magician and he is somehow levitating his board off of the ground as if it were glued to his feet. Any skateboarder that you know and ask will tell you nothing could be further from the truth. The way in which we ollie involves snapping the tail of our board to the ground, creating pop, and allowing the board to come up off of the ground. Your job as a skater to do the ollie is to initiate this and then get out of the board's way. If you pop your board but fail to jump, you're going to have no ollie. If you jump but fail to pop your board, you're going to do a hippie jump. Still pretty sweet, not an ollie. So we're going to break down where we want our feet, where we want to distribute our weight, and how you can go about learning the ollie. As I mentioned, the key component of the ollie is learning how to pop your board into the ground. In order to do that, you will have your weight evenly distributed between your 2 feet, and you are going to bend your front knee, allowing the board to come up and popping the tail into the ground. As you can see, if I put enough pressure on my tail, you'll notice the back wheels leave the ground. As a starting spot, I always recommend first-time skateboarders stand by their board and press the tail into the ground to see the feeling as the wheels leave the ground. Once you're comfortable with the idea of popping your tail into the ground, we can start to stand on our board and learn how to do it all together. A huge factor in the ollie is the front foot slide. There's millions of videos on the internet telling you this is the most important part. And I'm not going to disagree with them because I'm afraid of them. But I will say that I think pop is arguably more critical than sliding your front foot. So when you're starting out, I recommend focus primarily on popping that tail into the ground and immediately jumping out of the way, allowing the board to come up under your feet. It should look something like this. While you won't get very high, learning this is going to help solidify in your mind what it feels like to pop that tail off of the ground. Essentially, what's happening, if we were to exist in the vacuum of space with no gravity, as you pop that tail, it's initiating the board to rise up out of the way. This is where the front foot slide comes in. As you pop your board off of the ground, it's going to be at a rather steep incline. So, to compensate for this and create additional air, we're going to slide our front foot forward, pushing down on the nose, which is going to lift the tail up, flatten out the board, and make it easier for you to land. The way it should look is something like this. Starting out, ollies can be extremely intimidating. So, to make it a little easier, we found that practicing on a carpet or a rug is going to minimize the amount that your wheels roll, allowing you to really focus on getting that pop and that front foot slide. Once you feel comfortable doing stationary ollies, we recommend starting to try them while rolling. It's going to be the same basic motion, but you're going to have to accommodate for the fact that you're moving. To do this, as you step down on your tail, you want to jump forward to continue that forward momentum, and they'll look a little bit like this. As you start to get more comfortable with your ollie, especially while moving, we recommend adding some obstacles to make sure that you're really getting up and over things. To start out, we recommend a simple chalk line. That way, if you don't make it over, you're still going to be able to ride away. So, get your favorite piece of chalk, draw a line on the ground, practice ollieing over it. It's going to get you a little bit more comfortable with the idea of being forced to ollie before the object. Once you feel like you're mastering your chalk line ollies, I recommend moving to a slightly hardier obstacle. A broomstick is great in a pinch because it's not very high off the ground, but if you don't make it over, you're going to find out. Once you can successfully ollie over a broomstick, the most traditional way to practice your ollie is by taking your skateboard, placing it sideways, and ollieing over it. This only works, of course, if you have more than one skateboard. If you don't, any household item will do, or you can practice ollieing up and down curbs in your neighborhood. Common problems with learning how to ollie over obstacles usually involve your timing. It's often that we ollie too late, and what happens is, by the time we initiate our ollie, we're hitting our obstacle and we're not going to make it over. So, as you start to practice ollieing over obstacles, remember you want to initiate your ollie before your nose is about 6 inches to a foot away from your obstacle, because even as you come up, your board's going to continue to move, and by the time you have pop, you'll be about halfway over your obstacle. So, as you're practicing this, resist the urge to wait to initiate your ollie. Start ollieing earlier, and like any skateboard trick, they're easier to do with a little bit of speed, so don't go too slow. So you might find yourself thinking, well, I've followed all your directions and I still can't ollie. What gives? You're not wrong. Problems with learning to ollie include not figuring out how to get enough pop off of your tail, or more commonly, popping our tail and not jumping soon enough. So, as you're starting out, we recommend find a nice little bit of carpet that you can skate on. It's going to minimize the amount that your skateboard rolls as you learn the ollie, and you can really hone in and be very focused on getting that tail to pop and jumping immediately after. One other thing to consider while you're practicing your ollie is where are we putting our feet and where are we putting our weight. So, common riding stance involves our front foot on the bolts and our back foot on the tails. To do your ollie, you're going to want to practice scooting your front foot back to about halfway in between the wheels. What this does is it gives you a tighter stance. It's going to maximize your pop, and it's going to give you room for that front foot slide. The other thing to consider while you're practicing your ollie is where you're putting your weight. What I like to recommend for beginning skaters is to slowly bend down into your ollie, push that tail to the ground, and jump right off using your upward momentum to get off the ground. So you'll bend down slowly, pop, and jump. All right, bring it in. Bonus trick time. Now that you're working on your basics, learning how to push, learning how to stop, turn, and working on the ollies, I wanted to give you guys a little gift. It's a weird trick, it's one of my favorites, and you don't need to be very good to do it. In order to do this trick, we are going to start off in our bug squash position, back foot on the tail, front foot on the bolts. We're going to bend down towards our nose, and we're going to grab it with our front hand. Once we've got our nose, you'll notice we can lift up, and the back wheels of our board are going to release from the ground. When those back wheels are off the ground, we can spin at will on the tail of our board by using our shoulders. It'll look like this. Common problems to get started involve learning how to use those shoulders to get the rotation you want. So when you're starting out, you can also practice your front foot on the ground, grab that nose, and step off of that roadside foot, giving yourself plenty of spin. As you get more comfortable with this trick, you'll find out there's a variety of places to use it, including banks and quarter pipes. So the more comfortable you get, the more places you can take this trick. We're going to show you a couple options of how we like to do the trick. As you get more comfortable with this trick, feel free to spice it up. Maybe throw in a 1 foot, or as I like to do on the little quarter pipes, a small half cab blunt to nose grab pivot. The world is yours to skate. Do with it as you will. All right, guys, that concludes our first skate lesson. Hopefully those tips help you out a little bit. As always, the burden is on you. The more you practice, the better you will get. I guarantee it. And now, to wrap up class, I'm going to send it back to your teacher because Coach needs a little ramp time of his own. Thanks so much, Coach. Appreciate what you shared with us. So, for this week, go out there and practice those basics. Again, don't neglect switch. Work on all those things, see what you can do, and next week we'll be back with some more trick tips and some more exciting lesson plans. Until then, keep skating.